The first numbered major trump is called le battleur, the juggler, and according to Court de Jabellin, indicates the entire fabric of creation to be but a dream, existence a juggling of divine elements, and life a perpetual game of hazard. The seeming miracles of nature are but feats of cosmic legerdemain. Man is like the little ball in the hands of the juggler, who waves his wand and, presto, the ball vanishes. The world looking on does not realize that the vanished article is still cleverly concealed by the juggler in the hollow of his hand. This is also the adept whom Omar Khayyam calls the master of the show. His message is that the wise direct the phenomena of nature and are never deceived thereby. The magician stands behind a table on which are spread out a number of objects, prominent among them a cup, the Holy Grail and the cup placed by Joseph in Benjamin's sack, a coin, the tribute money and the wages of a master builder, and a sword, that of Goliath, and also the mystic blade of the philosopher which divides the false from the true. The magician's hat is in the form of the cosmic lemniscate, signifying the first motion of creation. His right hand points to the earth, his left holds aloft the rod of Jacob and also the staff that budded, the human spine crowned with the globe of creative intelligence. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the magician wears an urkis or golden band around his forehead, the table before him is in the form of a perfect cube, and his girdle is the serpent of eternity devouring its own tail. The second numbered major trump is called la papesse, the female pope, and has been associated with a curious legend of the only woman who ever sat in the pontifical chair. Pope Joan is supposed to have accomplished this by masquerading in malt attire, and was stoned to death when her subterfuge was discovered. This card portrays a seated woman crowned with a tiara surmounted by a lunar crescent. In her lap is the Torah, or Book of the Law, usually partly closed, and in her left hand are the keys to the secret doctrine, one gold and the other silver. Behind her rise two pillars, Jachin and Boaz, with a multicolored veil stretched between. Her throne stands upon a checkerboard floor. A figure called Juno is occasionally substituted for la papesse. Like the female hierophant of the mysteries of Cybele, this symbolic figure personifies the Shekinah, or divine wisdom. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the priestess is veiled, a reminder that the full countenance truth is not revealed to uninitiated man. A veil also covers one half of her book, thus intimating that but one half of the mystery of being can be comprehended. The third numbered major trump is called l'imperatrice, the empress, and has been likened to the woman clothed with the sun, described in the Apocalypse. On this card appears the winged figure of a woman seated upon a throne, supporting with her right hand a shield emblazoned with a phoenix and holding in her left a scepter surmounted by an orb or trifoliate flower. Beneath her left foot is sometimes shown the crescent. Either the empress is crowned or her head is surrounded by a diadem of stars, sometimes both. She is called generation, and represents the threefold spiritual world out of which proceeds the fourfold material world. To the graduate of the College of the Mysteries, she is the alma mater out of whose body the initiate has born again. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the empress is shown seated upon a cube filled with eyes and a bird is balanced upon the forefinger of the left hand. The upper part of her body is surrounded by a radiant golden nimbus. Being emblematic of the power from which emanates the entire tangible universe, l'imperatrice is frequently symbolized as pregnant. The fourth numbered major trump is called l'empire, the emperor, and by its numerical value is directly associated with the great deity revered by the Pythagoreans under the form of the tetrad. His symbols declare the emperor to be the demiurgus, the great king of the inferior world. The emperor is dressed in armor and his throne is a cube stone, upon which a phoenix is also clearly visible. The king has his legs crossed in a most significant manner and carries either a scepter surmounted by an orb or a scepter in his right hand and an orb in his left. The orb itself is evidence that he is supreme ruler of the world. Upon his right and left breasts respectively appear the symbols of the sun and moon, which in symbolism are referred to as the eyes of the great king. The position of the body and legs forms the symbol of sulfur, the sign of the ancient alchemical monarch. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the figure is in profile. He wears a Masonic apron and the skirt forms a right-angled triangle. Upon his head is the crown of the north and his forehead is adorned with the coiled urcus. The fifth numbered major trump is called le pape, the pope, and represents the high priest of a pagan or Christian mystery school. In this card, the hierophant wears the tiara and carries in his left hand the triple cross surmounting the globe of the world. His right hand, bearing upon its back the stigmata, makes the ecclesiastic sign of esotericism, and before him kneel two suppliants or acolytes. The back of the papal throne is in the form of a celestial and a terrestrial column. This card signifies the initiate or master of the mystery of life and, according to the Pythagoreans, the spiritual physician. The illusionary universe in the form of the two figures, polarity, kneels before the throne upon which sits the initiate who has elevated his consciousness to the plane of spiritual understanding and reality. In the Pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the master wears the urkis. A white and a black figure, life and death, light and darkness, good and evil, kneel before him. The initiate's mastery over unreality is indicated by the tiara and the triple cross, emblems of rulership over the three worlds which have issued from the unknowable first cause. The sixth numbered major trump is called Lamara, the lovers. There are two distinct forms of this tarot. One shows a marriage ceremony in which a priest is uniting a youth and a maiden, Adam and Eve, in holy wedlock. Sometimes a winged figure above transfixes the lovers with his dart. The second form of the card portrays a youth with a female figure on either side. One of these figures wears a golden crown and is winged, while the other is attired in the flowing robes of the Bacchante, and on her head is a wreath of vine leaves. The maidens represent the twofold soul of man, spiritual and animal. The first his guardian angel and the second his ever-present demon. The youth stands at the beginning of mature life, the parting of the ways, where he must choose between virtue and vice, the eternal and the temporal. Above, in a halo of light, is the genius of fate, his star, mistaken for Cupid by the uninformed. If youth chooses unwisely, the arrow of blindfolded fate will transfix him. In the Pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the arrow of the genius points directly to the figure of vice, thereby signifying that the end of her path is destruction. This card reminds man that the price of free will, or, more correctly, the power of choice, is responsibility. The seventh numbered major trump is called the chariot, and portrays a victorious warrior crowned and riding in a chariot drawn by black and white sphinxes or horses. The starry canopy of the chariot is upheld by 4 columns. This card signifies the exalted one who rides in the chariot of creation. The vehicle of the solar energy, being numbered 7, reveals the arcane truth that the 7 planers are the chariots of the solar power which rides victorious in their midst. The 4 columns supporting the canopy represent the 4 mighty ones who uphold the worlds, represented by the star-strewn drapery. The figure carries the scepter of the solar energy, and its shoulders are ornamented with lunar crescents, the Urim and Thummim. The sphinxes drawing the chariot represent the secret and unknown power by which the victorious ruler is moved continuously through the various parts of his universe. In certain tarot decks, the victor signifies the regenerated man, for the body of the chariot is a cubic stone. The man in armor is not standing in the chariot but is rising out of the cube, thus typifying the ascension of the 3 out of the 4, the turning upward of the flap of the master mason's apron. In the Pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the warrior carries the curved sword of Luna, is bearded to signify maturity, and wears the collar of the planetary orbits. His scepter, emblematic of the threefold universe, is crowned with a square upon which is a circle surmounted by a triangle. The 8th numbered major trump is called La Justice, and portrays a seated figure upon a throne, the back of which rises in the form of 2 columns. Justice is crowned and carries in her right hand a sword and in her left a pair of scales. This card is a reminder of the judgment of the soul in the Hall of Osiris. It teaches that only balanced forces can endure, and that eternal justice destroys with the sword that which is unbalanced. Sometimes justice is depicted with a braid of her own hair twisted around her neck in a manner resembling a hangman's knot. This may subtly imply that man is the cause of his own undoing, his actions, symbolized by his hair, being the instrument of his annihilation. In the Pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the figure of justice is raised upon a dais of 3 steps, for justice can be fully administered only by such as have been elevated to the 3rd degree. Justice is blindfolded, that the visible shall in no way influence its decision. For reasons he considers beyond his reader's intelligence, Mr. Waite reversed the 8th and 11th major trumps. The 9th numbered major trump is called L'Hermit. The hermit, and portrays an aged man, robed in a monkish habit and cowl, leaning on a staff. This card was popularly supposed to represent Diogenes in his quest for an honest man. In his right hand the recluse carries a lamp which he partly conceals within the folds of his cape. The hermit thereby personifies the secret organizations which for uncounted centuries have carefully concealed the light of the ancient wisdom from the profane. The staff of the hermit is knowledge, which is man's main and only enduring support. Sometimes the mystic rod is divided by knobs into 7 sections. a subtle reference to the mystery of the 7 sacred centers along the human spine. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the hermit shields the lamp behind a rectangular cape to emphasize the philosophic truth that wisdom, if exposed to the fury of ignorance, would be destroyed like the tiny flame of a lamp unprotected from the storm. Man's bodies form a cloak through which his divine nature is faintly visible like the flame of the partly covered lantern. Through renunciation, the hermetic life man attains depth of character and tranquility of spirit. The 10th numbered major trump is called Le Roue de Fortune, the Wheel of Fortune, and portrays a mysterious wheel with 8 spokes, the familiar Buddhist symbol of the cycle of necessity. To its rim cling Anubis and Typhon, the principles of good and evil. Above sits the immobile Sphinx, carrying the sword of justice and signifying the perfect equilibrium of universal wisdom. Anubis is shown rising and Typhon descending, but when Typhon reaches the bottom, evil ascends again, and when Anubis reaches the top, good wanes once more. The Wheel of Fortune represents the lower universe as a whole with divine wisdom. The Sphinx is the eternal arbiter between good and evil. In India, the chakra, or wheel, is associated with the life centers either of a world or of an individual. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the Sphinx is armed with a javelin, and Typhon is being thrown from the wheel. The vertical columns, supporting the wheel and so placed that but one is visible, represent the axis of the world with the inscrutable Sphinx upon its northern pole. Sometimes the wheel with its supports is in a boat upon the water. The water is the ocean of illusion, which is the sole foundation of the cycle of necessity. The 11th numbered major trump is called La Force, strength, and portrays a girl wearing a hat in the form of a lemniscate, with her hands upon the mouth of an apparently ferocious lion. Considerable controversy exists as to whether the maid is dosing or opening the lion's mouth. Most writers declare her to be closing the jaws of the beast, but a critical inspection conveys the opposite impression. The young woman symbolizes spiritual strength and the lion either the animal world which the girl is mastering or the secret wisdom over which she is mistress. The lion also signifies the summer solstice and the girl, Virgo, for when the sun enters this constellation, the virgin robs the lion of his strength. King Solomon's throne was ornamented with lions and he himself was likened to the king of beasts with the key of wisdom between its teeth. In this sense, the girl may be opening the lion's mouth to find the key contained therein, for courage is a prerequisite to the attainment of knowledge. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the symbolism is the same except that the maiden is represented as a priestess wearing an elaborate crown in the form of a bird surmounted by serpents and an ibis. The 12th numbered major trump is called Le Pendu, the hanged man, and portrays a young man hanging by his left leg from a horizontal beam, the latter supported by 2 tree trunks from each of which 6 branches have been removed. The right leg of the youth is crossed in back of the left and his arms are folded behind his back in such a way as to form a cross surmounting a downward pointing triangle. The figure thus forms an inverted symbol of sulfur and, according to Levi, signifies the accomplishment of the magnum opus. In some decks the figure carries under each arm a money bag from which coins are escaping. Popular tradition associates this card with Judas Iscariot, who is said to have gone forth and hanged himself, the money bags representing the payment he received for his crime. Levi likens the hanged man to Prometheus, the eternal sufferer, further declaring that the upturned feet signify the spiritualization of the lower nature. It is also possible that the inverted figure denotes the loss of the spiritual faculties, for the head is below the level of the body. The stumps of the 12 branches are the signs of the zodiac divided into 2 groups, positive and negative. The picture therefore depicts polarity temporarily triumphant over the spiritual principle of equilibrium. To attain the heights of philosophy, therefore, man must reverse, or invert, the order of his life. He then loses his sense of personal possession because he renounces the rule of gold in favor of the golden rule. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the hanged man is suspended between 2 palm trees and signifies the sun god who dies perennially for his world. The 13th numbered major trump is called La Mort, death, and portrays a reaping skeleton with a great scythe cutting off the heads, hands, and feet rising out of the earth about it. In the course of its labors the skeleton has apparently cut off one of its own feet. Not all tarot decks show this peculiarity, but this point well emphasizes the philosophic truth that unbalance and destructiveness are synonymous. The skeleton is the proper emblem of the first and supreme deity because it is the foundation of the body, as the absolute is the foundation of creation. The reaping skeleton physically signifies death, but philosophically that irresistible impulse in nature which causes every being to be ultimately absorbed into the divine condition in which it existed before the illusionary universe had been manifested. The blade of the scythe is the moon with its crystallizing power. The field in which death reaps is the universe, and the card discloses that all things growing out of the earth shall be hewed down and return to earth again. Kings, queens, courtesans, and knaves are alike to death, the master of the visible and apparent parts of all creatures. In some tarot decks, death is symbolized as a figure in armor mounted on a white horse which tramples underfoot old and young alike. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, a rainbow is seen behind the figure of death, thus signifying that the mortality of the body of itself achieves the immortality of the spirit. Death, though it destroys form, can never destroy life, which continually renews itself. This card is the symbol of the constant renovation of the universe, disintegration that reintegration may follow upon a higher level of expression. The 14th numbered major trump is called La Temperance, and portrays an angelic figure with the sun upon her forehead. She carries two yaws, one empty and the other full, and continually pours the contents of the upper into the lower. In some tarot decks, the flowing water takes the form of the symbol of Aquarius. Not one drop, however, of the living water is lost in this endless transference between the superior vessel and the inferior. When the lower urn is filled, the vases are reversed, thus signifying that life pours first from the invisible into the visible, then from the visible back into the invisible. The spirit controlling this flow is an emissary of the great Jehovah, demiurgus of the world. The sun, or light cluster, upon the woman's forehead controls the flow of water, which, being drawn upward into the air by the solar rays, descends upon the earth as rain, to drawn up and fall again ad infinitum. Herein is also shown the passage of the human life forces back and forth between positive and negative poles of the creative system. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the symbolism is the same, except that the winged figure is male instead of female. It is surrounded by a solar nimbus and pours water from a golden urn into a silver one, typifying the descent of celestial forces into the sublunary spheres. The 15th numbered major trump is called Le Diable, the devil, and portrays a creature resembling Pan with the horns of a ram or deer, the arms and body of a man, and the legs and feet of a goat or dragon. The figure stands upon a cubic stone, to a ring in the front of which are chained two satyrs. For a scepter, this so-called demon carries a lighted torch or candle. The entire figure is symbolic of the magic powers of the astral light, or universal mirror, in which the divine forces are reflected in an inverted, or infernal, state. The demon is winged like a bar, showing that it pertains to the nocturnal, or shadow inferior sphere. The animal natures of man, in the form of a male and a female elemental, are chained to its footstool. The torch is the false light which guides unillumined souls to their own undoing. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot appears Typhon, a winged creature composed of a hog, a man, a bat, a crocodile, and a hippopotamus, standing in the midst of its own destructiveness and holding aloft the firebrand of the incendiary. Typhon is rated by man's own misdeeds, which, turning upon their maker, destroy him. The 16th numbered major trump is called Le Feu du Ciel, the fire of heaven, and portrays a tower the battlements of which, in the form of a crown, are being destroyed by a bolt of lightning issuing from the sun. The crown, being considerably smaller than the tower which it surmounts, possibly indicates that its destruction resulted from its insufficiency. The lightning bolt sometimes takes the form of the zodiacal sign of Scorpio, and the tower may be considered a phallic emblem. Two figures are failing from the tower, one in front and the other behind. This tarot card is popularly associated with the traditional fall of man. The divine nature of humanity is depicted as a tower. When his crown is destroyed, man falls into the lower world and takes upon himself the illusion of materiality. Here also is a key to the mystery of sex. The tower is supposedly filled with gold coins which, showering out in great numbers from the rent made by the lightning bolt, suggesting potential powers. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the tower is a pyramid, its apex shattered by a lightning bolt. Here is a reference to the missing capstone of the universal house. In support of Levi's contention that this Erd is connected with the Hebrew letter Ayin, the failing figure in the foreground is similar in general appearance to the 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The 17th numbered major trump is called Les Toiles, the stars, and portrays a young girl kneeling with one foot in water and the other on, and her body somewhat suggesting the swastika. She has two urns, the contents of which she pours upon the land and sea. Above the girl's head are 8 stars. one of which is exceptionally large and bright. Count de Jabellin considers the great star to be Sothis or Sirius, the other 7 are the sacred planets of the ancients. He believes the female figure to be Isis in the act of causing the inundations of the Nile which accompanied the rising of the dog star. The unclothed figure of Isis may well signify that nature does not receive her garment of verdure until the rising of the Nile waters releases the germinal life of plants and flowers. The bush and bird, or butterfly, signify the growth and resurrection which accompany the rising of the waters. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the great star contains a diamond composed of a black and white triangle, and the flowering bush is a tall plant with a trifoliate head upon which a butterfly alights. Here Isis is in the form of an upright triangle and the vases have become shallow cups. The elements of water and earth under her feet represent the opposites of nature sharing impartially in the divine abundance. The 18th numbered major trump is called La Lune, the moon, and portrays Luna rising between 2 towers, one light and the other dark. A dog and a wolf are baying at the rising moon, and in the foreground is a pool of water from which emerges a crawfish. Between the towers are path winds, vanishing in the extreme background. Court de Jabellin sees in this card another reference to the rising of the Nile and states on the authority of Pausanias that the Egyptians believed the inundations of the Nile to result from the tears of the moon goddess which, falling into the river, swelled its flow. These tears are seen dropping from the lunar face. Court de Jabellin also relates the towers to the pillars of Hercules, beyond which, according to the Egyptians, the luminaries never passed. He notes also that the Egyptians represented the tropics as dogs who as faithful doorkeepers prevented the sun and moon from penetrating too near the poles. The crab or crawfish signifies the retrograde motion of the moon. This card also refers to the path of wisdom. Man in his quest of reality emerges from the pull of illusion. After mastering the guardians of the gates of wisdom, he passes between the fortresses of science and theology and follows the winding path leading to spiritual liberation. His way is faintly lighted by human reason, the moon, which is but a reflection of divine wisdom. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the towers are pyramids, the dogs are black and white respectively, and the moon is partly obscured by clouds. The entire scene suggests the dreary and desolate place in which the mystery dramas of the lesser rites were enacted. The 19th numbered major trump is called Le Soleil, the sun, and portrays 2 children, probably Gemini, the twins, standing together in a garden surrounded by a magic ring of flowers. One of these children should be shown as male and the other female. Behind him is a brick wall apparently enclosing the garden. Above the wall the sun is rising, its rays alternately straight and curved. 13 teardrops are falling from the solar face Levi, seeing in the 2 children faith and reason, which must coexist as long as the temporal universe endures. Writes, human equilibrium requires 2 feet, the worlds gravitate by means of 2 forces, generation needs 2 sexes. Such is the meaning of the Arcanum of Solomon, represented by the 2 pillars of the temple, Jachin and Boaz. See Transcendental Magic. The Sun of Truth is shining into the garden of the world over which these 2 children, as personifications of eternal powers, reside. The harmony of the world depends upon the coordination of 2 qualities symbolized throughout the ages as the mind and the heart. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the children give place to a youth and a maiden. Above them in a solar nimbus is the phallic emblem of generation, a line piercing a circle. Gemini is ruled by Mercury and the 2 children personify the serpents entwined around the caduceus. The 20th numbered major trump is called Le Jugement, the judgment, and portrays 3 figures rising apparently from their tombs, though but one coffin is visible. Above them in a blaze of glory is a winged figure, presumably the angel Gabriel, blowing a trumpet. This tarot represents the liberation of man's threefold spiritual nature from the sepulchre of his material constitution. Since but 1/3 of the spirit actually enters the physical body, the other 2/3 constituting the hermetic anthropos or overman, only one of the 3 figures is actually rising from the tomb. Court de Jabellin believes that the coffin may have been an afterthought of the card makers and that the scene actually represents creation rather than resurrection. In philosophy, these 2 words are practically synonymous. The blast of the trumpet represents the creative word, by the intoning of which man is liberated from his terrestrial limitations. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, it is evident that the 3 figures signify the parts of a single being, for 3 mummies are shown emerging from one mummy case. The 21st numbered major trump is called Le Monde, the world, and portrays a female figure draped with a scarf which the wind blows into the form of the Hebrew letter Kaf. Her extended hands, each of which holds a wand, and her left leg, which crosses behind the right, cause the figure to assume the form of the alchemical symbol of sulfur. The central figure is surrounded by a wreath in the form of a vesica piscis, which Levi likens to the Kabbalistic crown kedar. The cherubim of Ezekiel's vision occupy the corners of the card. This tarot is called the microcosm and the macrocosm because in it are summed up every agency contributing to the structure of creation. The figure in the form of the emblem of sulfur represents the divine fire and the heart of the great mystery. The wreath is nature, which surrounds the fiery center. The cherubim represent the elements, worlds, forces, and planes issuing out of the divine fiery center of life. The wreath signifies the crown of the initiate, which is given to those who master the four guardians and enter into the presence of unveiled truth. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the cherubim surround a wreath composed of 12 trifoliate flowers, the decanates of the zodiac. A human figure kneels below this wreath, playing upon a harp of 3 strings, for the spirit must create harmony in the triple constitution of its inferior nature before it can gain for itself the solar crown of immortality.